Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, February the 18th, 2026. Today, the Sun moves into Pisces. The Pisces season starts, and in this video, I want to spend some time looking at the sign Pisces and what it might mean for the Sun to be in this sign. But before I do that, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, February the 18th. So here is today's chart set for noon, New York time. And, don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So as far as this chart is concerned, you can see that we kind of have a new moon. So as I was saying in my last video, in my video for Tuesday, this new moon that we had yesterday, now by the way, I'm making this video on a Tuesday, but I'm doing it for the Wednesday. I'm making the video on Tuesday the 17th, but I'm making it for Wednesday the 18th, just to make that clear. So looking at this new moon, so we had that new moon on Tuesday, which is yesterday, because this is the video for the 18th, even if you happen to be looking at it on the 17th. So we had this new moon in late Aquarius. So sounds like a very Aquarian new moon, the Sun and the Moon both in this sign. But now we've got the Sun and the Moon both in Pisces. So the nature of this new moon changes. And you could argue that this new moon perhaps becomes more benign, becomes not quite so difficult when the moon and the sun change sign. I mean, I'm thinking particularly on a personal level. I think on a collective level, there are some problems with this new moon, which I talked about in sort of yesterday's video. So as far as the moon going into Pisces is concerned, this it's already there. The moon's certainly already in Pisces, and it's making a mutual reception to Jupiter. So we've got the moon and Jupiter in each other's signs, and we have got the moon making a conjunction to the North Node. It's making a conjunction to Venus. It's making a trine to Jupiter. So that really kind of bodes well. I don't know what Tuesday was like for you, but I think today, Wednesday, should be a better day. And that Moon Jupiter trine, Moon and Jupiter in mutual reception, I think that to my mind looks good. And then the Moon also makes a conjunction to Mercury, and really that's the main stuff going on. Those lunar aspects as the Moon moves through Pisces, and of course the Sun moves into Pisces. So the Sun moves into Pisces at, I think it's 15:52, which is 8 minutes to 4 in the afternoon. So just before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, London time. In other words, tea time. The Sun moves into Pisces. Now, if you are in the Americas, that means this morning the Sun moves into Pisces. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, it might not be until early on Thursday that we get this sign change. But it is an important sign change. I'll be talking at the end of this video more about what it means for the Sun to move into Pisces, or some of my thoughts about what it's all about. But you could say that the Sun has been in Aquarius for the last month, and the Sun in Aquarius, well, it is in its detriment. That's sometimes forgotten. The Sun rules Leo. Therefore, when it's in Aquarius, you could argue that it's the weakest sign for the Sun to be in. Now, that doesn't mean to say if you've got the Sun in Aquarius, you are weak, but in a general sense, particularly if you're looking at a horary chart, the Sun in Aquarius, can be a problem. And so that sign change arguably strengthens the Sun, and quite soon the Sun will get even stronger. The Sun will get even stronger when Venus changes sign. So in early March, Venus moves out of Pisces into Aries, and so of course when the moment Venus moves into Aries, it is in mutual reception with the Sun by exaltation, because the Sun and the Venus are in each other's signs, well, are in each other's exaltation signs. And additionally, the Sun in Pisces, the Sun is in a sign ruled by Jupiter, so it's moved out of a sign ruled by Saturn, and we now have more of a Jupiter influence. But I will be talking about that later in the video. So that's the picture for New York. If we set the chart for Sydney, Australia, here we are. The Sun is the Sun is going to be, as you can see, the Sun is at 29 degrees 23 Aquarius at noon Sydney time. So all day long the Sun is going to be in Aquarius. So the Sun does not move into Aquarius until Thursday. So that is one difference, certainly a difference between Australia and the Americas. In Americas, it's pretty much a Sun in Pisces day, but Australia, no, you've still got the Sun. You've still got the Sun in Aquarius, but in Australasia, you've still got the Moon is definitely going to be in Pisces pretty much all day long, and the Moon is going to be conjunct the North Node and conjunct Venus. So there's not such a big difference between the broad astrological events taking place in Australasia compared to, say, California. And then there is the heliocentric view, putting the Sun at the center of the solar system, where of course it should be. And as far as the main events, Mercury heliocentrically is in Gemini. It's 13 Gemini, and it's making a trine to Mars at 13 Aquarius. Remember, these are the heliocentric sign positions. They can be very different from the geocentric sign positions. At least the positions of the Earth, Mercury, and Venus can be very different. You can see that the Earth has just gone into Virgo. The Sun has just gone into Pisces, but the Earth has just gone into, from a geocentric point of view, the Pisces season has started, but heliocentrically, it's more sort of it's about Virgo, and the Sun the Earth having gone into Virgo makes a square to Uranus, and Mercury is making a trine to Mars. So heliocentrically, there is indication of some excitement. I mean, Mercury trine Mars might mean that perhaps we've got a lot to say, we've got a lot to communicate, there's a lot we are thinking about, and there just could be a degree of mental excitement, and also just wanting to do something, wanting to say something, and that's going to be intensified by the fact that Earth is square Uranus. Okay, we've just had Sun square Uranus geocentrically. Now we've got Earth square Uranus, and that can stir things up. Heliocentric Uranus is right in the first degree of Gemini. Heliocentric Earth is in the first degree of Virgo. They're coming together by square, and that can create action. It can create excitement, and things happening perhaps that we just weren't expecting. So it's certainly from a heliocentric point of view, it looks like it could be quite an active day. And also we've got Venus trine Jupiter, and Venus trine Jupiter, that's a great aspect. And it's we've got Venus, Venus trine Jupiter. We kind of have that in the geocentric chart. Venus is about 10 degrees Pisces, Jupiter is at 15 degrees Pisces. So that Venus trine Jupiter geocentrically is starting to form, but heliocentrically it's pretty much exact. In fact, I think it was exact yesterday, so it's still pretty close. So Venus trine Jupiter is a fortunate influence, and it can make things better. It can make things feel better for us, and we might feel that things finally are starting to move, and there are grounds for optimism. This was a theme in my video for yesterday, looking at this new moon, and I know that there's a huge amount of pessimism around, and I think that this pessimism just might be overstated. Overall, I'm kind of optimistic about 2026. I know that there's a lot of sort of doom and gloom around, but this week even might be as bad as it gets. I mean, we're still dealing with the aftermath of the new moon, or I looked at the markets. I'm making this video on Tuesday morning Pacific time, and I looked at the markets. It's things seem to be a bit down, and it seems rather difficult. And I'm not making any market predictions here, but I do think overall this Sun moving into Pisces is going to make things easier, and it's more than that. There are other things going on, and you can see heliocentrically Venus trine Jupiter. There's always something to be happy about, and things might not be quite as bad as they seem to be on the surface. So that is the broad astrological picture, and now I want to consider the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, February the 18th, 2026. Aries. There are a lot of planets now in Pisces, and of course the Sun has moved into Pisces, and you might say that the Sun is almost one of your rulers. I mean, I know that Mars is the ruler of Aries, but the Sun is the Sun is exalted in Aries, so I think you do have a special connection with the Sun, and the Sun moving into Pisces might just mean that you are starting to slow down. I'm not saying you're going to slow down forever, but you might be inclined to slow down if you treat things simply, and you're not trying to be especially cosmic, and you're not thinking too hard about some wider destiny. There are things you want to deal with in your own way, and perhaps Aries, you're going to be becoming slightly sort of more emotional than usual, but in a quiet way. When I say emotional, more emotional than usual, I don't mean like sort of crazy angry emotion, just perhaps being more reflective, and not feeling that you always have to be in the center of things. And I think, in fact, Aries, today, you might quite enjoy being on the periphery, being able to observe, being able to watch what other people are doing, without being the one taking the initiative. That can be exhausting. People often expect Aries to be the ones to initiate. When Aries walks into a room, it's very often everything gets sort of brightened up. People think, finally Aries has arrived, finally something can happen, something can go on. But I don't think you always appreciate that responsibility. What have other people got to offer? And maybe they've got quite a lot to offer. Venus is in Pisces. Venus can be representative of other people. It's starting to trine Jupiter. Heliocentrically, Venus is exactly trine Jupiter, and that might just be what other people are doing, what other people want to do, and maybe it really is as simple as that. And additionally, with other people, you kind of have a few doubts. You don't want to get necessarily too close to any one person. I think that when you look at the people around you right now, you are very aware of their drawbacks, of their weak points, why they are not perfect, and also perhaps why you can't rely on anyone. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to be let down, but I think that the limits of any relationship, not necessarily the very close relationships, but the limits of relationships in general are going to be clear to you, I hope. If not, if you rely on people, if you put yourself in that kind of position where you are reliant on them, where everything hangs on another person's decision or another person making some gesture, well, that might not be so good. Then you might feel let down, and that might indeed confirm some of your views. Now, from a heliocentric view, I just looked at the heliocentric chart. There is, though, something that needs to be considered, and it is the fact that Mercury is making a trine to Mars. So Mercury is making a trine to your ruler, and maybe that aspect is of some importance. If you can be bothered. I regard heliocentric aspects as being sort of quite high level, and we don't necessarily have access to them. But maybe it just depends on what kind of Aries you are. But if you are the kind of Aries that is thinking about big ideas, thinking about politics and government and activism and what's wrong with the world, and also what might be right with the world if you made the effort, then maybe that Mercury trine Jupiter is something you can pick up on, because it's collective. If you think about things in a collective way, think about your role and your responsibility collectively, then you might be starting to pick up on the Mercury trine Jupiter, and you might be able to start to sort of utilize its power. And with Mercury trine Jupiter, it starts with the mind. It starts with with what you are thinking about, what occurs to you, and something occurs to you, and it might just be quite amazing, and it's not something that you can necessarily talk about immediately, but you can see where the path of action lies with this Mercury trine Jupiter, and maybe that's something that you can start to think about, something that you can start to put into action. But it starts with the inspiration, then it starts at a mental level, and then you finally get the action. Now, that doesn't mean to say you have to do anything today. Maybe you can wait till tomorrow or the day after, when the moon moves into Aries. But in general, Aries, I think it's a good day. It's a good day because I don't think that you have to do anything. I don't think you have to, be at the center of things, worrying about you being responsible for everything. I think that you can, maybe take a step back, and if you can take a step back, I think that will just make things a lot easier. Taurus. Overall, Taurus, I think that things are certainly looking good. Venus continues to be in Pisces. Venus is still pretty close to the North Node, and because of that, I hope that you're feeling relatively good about yourself. you should be feeling relatively good about yourself because of that Venus conjunct the North Node. Also, the Moon is making a trine to Venus. The Moon is in Pisces, and Venus is slowly starting to make a trine to Jupiter. In fact, heliocentrically, that trine to Jupiter is pretty much exact. And so, with all of that going on, I think Taurus, there shouldn't be anything to complain about. You've got everything you need, and I think that you should find that other people are helpful. You can make them helpful. I think that your social skills at the moment, Taurus, are really very good. You can come over as someone who is very welcoming, who is emotionally vibrant. Not too emotionally vibrant, but you seem to be emotionally on everyone else's wavelength, and so that does look good. Yet, having said all that, there's just this possibility that some Taurians can sort of drift into a bit of negativity. Things might be going well, you might be feeling okay, but you're thinking, where are things going to where are things going to develop? How is it going to develop? And if you really analyze the situation, maybe you shouldn't analyze the situation, but if you do start to analyze the situation, it might just occur to you that maybe things won't go so well. Perhaps things will start to go wrong. You can certainly see how things could go wrong, and as far as you're concerned, they might go badly wrong. So I've just contradicted myself. I have said that things look really good, but I've also talked about this potential for negativity, real negativity. So how does one balance this? I think that the impulse to be positive is very strong, and certainly in terms of external events. For example, your social life, I think things can really work well. But there's still this feeling that nothing is quite as it appears on the surface. And you need to get this thing in perspective. It's good to be realistic. Absolutely, it's great to be realistic. But you don't want to be too realistic. No, I mean, you can't be too realistic. You should be completely realistic, but you don't want to drift into a cloud of negative fantasy. By negative fantasy, we're talking about fantasizing about everything that could go wrong, and then we might be thinking about self-sabotage. You could sabotage yourself, being in a good position, but your negativity cuts in and you could destroy what was in front of you. And I don't think that would be such a good thing. So, get the balance right. I mean, it's good that you can be realistic, but you don't want that realism to spoil what I think, should be, a very good day. And you can start to see the future, conceive the future, see how it can sort of manifest in a way that is positive for you. And with Venus moving through Pisces, it's just keep enjoying that positive energy and just don't spoil it by moments of negativity. Gemini. Right now, Gemini, you have a lot of energy. We looked at the heliocentric picture, and heliocentrically there is a trine between Mercury and Mars. In fact, it's a heliocentric trine, not a geocentric trine. And this heliocentric trine is quite motivating, and it's quite energizing. And maybe something is calling you. Something is calling you to use your energy, to put your energy into something constructive. That's something you can do. So you don't want to just do nothing. You've got to really employ that energy. And it's not just because of that heliocentric trine. That's just one aspect of it. In general, you perhaps have a little bit too much energy. So what do you do with it? And so I think it's very important, Gemini, that right now you have a clear focus. And one thing that we've got sometime today, is we've got the Sun moving into Pisces, Sun moving out of Aquarius into Pisces. So we've now got quite a few planets in Pisces. We've got the Sun in Pisces in the end, and the Moon. Well, we've got the Sun in Pisces. We'll have the Moon in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces, Venus in Pisces. It's all there. Pisces is really piling up. And in terms of what that means for Gemini, it is about your ambitions, what you want to do, where you want to go. And now might be now might be the time to really push it forward. Because you just had Saturn in Pisces, and so Saturn's left Pisces. It's not going back into Pisces. And that Saturn in Pisces, that year or couple of years when Saturn was in Pisces, did stir things up. It perhaps made you understand your limitations, but also made you understand what you could do if you had the opportunity. And now that Saturn is out of Pisces and you've got these other planets in Pisces, now you need to perhaps pick up the challenge that Saturn left you. And over the next month, while the Sun moves through Pisces, I think that you really have a chance to move forward and to think about what your goals are, and how you want to achieve your ambitions. And I think it really is, Gemini. It's okay to be ambitious, and what you don't want to do is trip yourself up by having doubts and thinking you can't do it and coming up with all sorts of reasons why it's better to just stay exactly where you are. It's often a good idea, or might feel a good idea, to stay exactly where you are, but I don't think it is. Not now. Not now that we've got this new moon. This new moon. This is a new moon that started in Aquarius and morphs into Pisces. The Sun and the Moon are now together in Pisces, or they're coming together in Pisces. Okay, they are separating from each other, but when the Sun moves into Pisces today, okay, it might be early tomorrow if you're in Australia, the Moon will be waiting for it in Pisces, and so the new moon starts to become very relevant for you and your future. And do think about where do really think about where it's all going. And it is okay to be ambitious, and part of being ambitious is, or at least part of being sensibly ambitious, is also to be sensitive. I mean, I know that Gemini has a reputation for not being particularly emotionally fluent or emotionally literate. I mean, at least. Maybe I'm projecting, having my Sun in Gemini, and even though I've got Venus in Cancer, I'm not really someone who's very easy with the emotional side of things. But Geminis can be sensitive; they can be very sensitive, and at the moment, with all these planets in Pisces, your sensitivity can serve you well. It can give you a real insight into what needs to be done. If you want things to happen, you are going to have to negotiate other people. You're going to have to negotiate society, and I think you have a good understanding of what's going on, and this understanding can really help you move forward. So this is looking good. And as I said at the beginning of this piece on Gemini, right now you have a lot of energy. You could fritter that energy away. It could go all over the place. It needn't go all over the place. So focus on what's going on. Focus on what you need to do. There's no need to be narrow-minded, but you still have to have a sense of purpose. You can't have 20 senses of purpose. That's just not going to work. You've just got to have one, maybe two. I mean, you're a Gemini. It's a double-bodied sign, so you can have perhaps two powers, but no more than two. You don't need more than two. And so I think that today, with the Sun starting to move into Pisces, it can really be a very good foundation for the month ahead. Cancer. Things are looking good. I think it should be a good day. I think tomorrow can be good as well. I think that things are moving. You're feeling better. You feel that old worries are starting to drift away, and you kind of understand what's going on. Your emotions are on really good form. The new moon, which because yesterday we had a new moon, Tuesday we had a new moon, but this new moon is developing. It has kind of two sides to it. There's the Aquarius side to the new moon that we had yesterday when we had both the sun and the moon in Aquarius. Now we are in the Pisces side of its new moon, because the sun is moving into Pisces, the moon is moving into Pisces. So the moon is already in Pisces, so we've got the sun and the moon in Pisces. So this new moon now has a different nature, and I think its nature is quite positive. So maybe yesterday there were a few things that were bothering you, things that you weren't comfortable with. Things seemed to be rather complicated, and now today, Wednesday, it's more straightforward. And at the same time, Cancer, you're just feeling more open-minded. You feel that you can deal with things. You can even deal with things that you don't know much about. So if you want to do some exploring, or you want to find out about things that you know very little about, it now might be a good chance to be thinking about that. And don't feel that your knowledge base is static. It's not. You can develop your knowledge. There are things you can learn about. There are things you can study. You can elevate yourself, to a new level. So it's important not to get stuck, or to feel that doors are closing. Doors are not closing. Doors are definitely sort of opening. And we might be talking about knowledge in general. We might be talking about higher knowledge. We might be talking about spiritual knowledge, and you thinking about what your spirituality is all about. I mean, with spirituality and astrology, I have to be careful here, because I think the problem is that astrologers, perhaps they talk too much about spirituality. I mean, you could argue there's nothing spiritual about astrology at all, by the way. It needn't be. It could be something, very mundane. If you look at the textbook of William Lilly, written in the 17th century, he talks about a few spiritual context ideas, like will I find the philosopher's stone, but mainly it's sort of mundane stuff, money, relationships, work, buying houses, and so on. So but now in the 21st century, it's kind of easy to talk about spirituality, because it's difficult to be it's difficult to be shown to be wrong. It's just something general you can wax lyrical about. But I'm serious when I talk about your spirituality. I'm not just saying it just to fill up time. Do think about what you believe in, what you're maybe in touch with, what guides you. And these thoughts, it's not just speculative thinking. You are trying to sort of move yourself to a new level. And I think, with these planets in Pisces, I think you can. And one reason why you can move yourself to a new level, is because fear is going down. Now, I know that we've got Saturn-Neptune conjunction coming up, and I know that with Saturn-Neptune conjunction, there can be a lot of fear connected with it, but I don't think that you need to be infected with this fear. And I think with these planets moving out of Aquarius, you just feel that more options are open to you, and I think there are also fewer worries. And right now with Moon making a trine to Jupiter, I mean the Moon, your ruler, it's in a great position. It's in mutual reception to Jupiter. It's applying to a trine to Jupiter. It's conjunct Venus. It's conjunct Mercury. So really, it's all happening. So Cancer, well, it should be a 5-star day. It can be a 5-star day. So have a great Wednesday. Leo, the sun is your ruler, so we do have to think about what the sun is doing. And the sun has been in Aquarius for the last month, and now it's changing sign, and it's moving into Pisces. So the question is that a good thing, or is it a bad thing? I mean, I know that one's not supposed to be absolute, be thinking about it's good, it's bad. But I mean, I think there is such a thing as good fortune, bad fortune, and the Sun in Aquarius is not entirely great. I mean, if you look at the Sun in Aquarius from a perspective of traditional astrology, it's in its detriment, because the Sun rules Leo. The Sun is very strong in Leo, so it's kind of weak in its opposite sign. In fact, of all the 12 signs, Aquarius is the worst place for the Sun to be in, all things being equal. That doesn't mean to say there's a problem if you've got your Sun in Aquarius, but lots and lots of successful people have their Sun in this sign. So it's perhaps it's more about events and how things are developing, and maybe horary astrology. So with the Sun in Aquarius, maybe things weren't always great. Sun in Aquarius, Leo, there might have been times when you felt that you weren't always in full control. You had to consider what other people were doing, and that's not something that you necessarily wanted to do. You maybe wanted to be more independent, and there may have been times where it felt that there was some kind of weakness. But I'm talking about something quite general. The Sun is always in Aquarius at this time of year, so that can't be helped, and it always changes sign at this time of year, on February the 18th, around then. And so Sun moving into Pisces, you could say the Sun gets stronger when it moves into Pisces, and the Sun will get particularly strong when Venus moves into Aries. So that is, let's just remind myself of when Venus moves into Aries. Venus moves into Aries it's the beginning of March, on March the 6th. So March the 6th is possibly a date to look forward to, because when Venus moves into Aries, it's in the sign of the Sun's exaltation. The Sun is already in Pisces, which is the sign of Venus's exaltation. So on March the 6th, the Sun suddenly gets really strong. And so, Leo, that might have an impact on you. We have one change, and then we're about to have another change in, I don't know, when is that? Sort of 2 or 3 weeks. So it's not so long to wait. But, overall, Leo, I think, with the Sun moving into Pisces, I think you are in a stronger position, though perhaps you're going to become more thoughtful. There are things that you want to think through, and I think that your feelings are going to become stronger, and that might be a change. Leo is a fire sign, and having to deal with a load of water, because water and emotions are very much sort of connected, might be a little bit of a shock to the system. But I think you can handle it. And sometimes, Leo, it all gets to be too positive, too active, and you need some reflection. And over the next month, while the Sun is moving through Pisces, you get a chance to reflect. It's perhaps something that just happens every year. And so in that sense, Leo, I think really you should be welcoming the Pisces season. Now, just because you are reflective and are starting to settle down doesn't mean to say that nothing is going on. If you make the effort, you can really start to, you can make an impact, and perhaps you can make an impact because you're becoming more emotionally vibrant. And one aspect that we're starting to get, but I don't think it's not exact until tomorrow, is a sesquiquadrate between the Sun and Jupiter. And so that, that happens like the moment the sun moves into a Pisces. You start feeling that sesquiquadrate to Jupiter. And I know sesquiquadrate is traditionally a difficult aspect, but probably we should just see it as a contact between the sun and Jupiter. So you start to get that Jupiter energy. And of course, the sun does eventually, it's starting to move towards a trine to Jupiter, but right now it's moving towards a sesquiquadrate. So there is this energy that you start to pick up on. To begin with, you might not know, what to do with this energy, but if you make the effort, particularly, with other people, and you really feel that you need to push a point, or you need to sort of dramatically introduce yourself to someone, and you want to be at the center of things, you can be at the center of things. And I think that you're going to be helped by your sort of general sensitivity, because right now you are becoming more sensitive. You have a better awareness of other people's feelings and motivations, and I think overall that's really going to help. Virgo. So big changes are afoot. The Aquarius season is now absolutely coming to an end. We've still got Mars in Aquarius, but today the sun moves out of Aquarius and it moves into Pisces, and the nature of the new moon changes. Yesterday, Tuesday, we had a new moon in Aquarius. Now today we're getting the sun and the moon both in Pisces, and of course that is relevant to you because Pisces is your opposite sign, and over the next few weeks, well, you could say longer, because Mercury's in Pisces. Mercury stays in Pisces for a long time. Mercury is your ruler. It stays in Pisces until April. So now, Virgo, the emphasis, it is on other people, and what is not you. I mean, that's Pisces. I mean, Pisces, you could argue, is the sort of anti-Virgo. It's maybe everything that Virgo is not, or is it? Maybe we should just see Pisces and Virgo as just a single axis, and it's not necessarily helpful to look at things in 12 signs. Maybe we should look at 6 axes, and maybe every Virgo has got their inner Pisces that they're trying to cultivate. I think it's a good argument for that, actually. Pisces perhaps represents everything that you maybe dump onto other people. Pisces is a chaotic sign, and other people are chaotic, the world is chaotic, and perhaps you sometimes don't take responsibility for your own chaotic nature. And with these planets moving into Pisces, if things don't necessarily go to plan, if things are chaotic, your first inclination might be to blame other people. It's someone else messing it up, someone else not making themselves clear, someone else causing confusion. But what's your role in it all? And so the first thing to do with all these planets in Pisces, Virgo, all these planets moving into Pisces, is be ready to take responsibility. Now, it doesn't mean to say you have to be guilty for other people, feel guilty for other people's mistakes, but be ready to take responsibility. And also perhaps become aware of ways in which you yourself might be chaotic and imprecise, and how you occasionally get things wrong. Even Virgos can get things wrong, and I think that's just going to make things easier for you. And of course, with all these planets in Pisces, it allows you to be a whole person, because you could argue that every sign is an axis. It's not 12 signs, it's 6 axes, and this axis of Virgo and Pisces, if you want to be a whole person, you have to be aware of both signs, and how both signs, both Virgo and Pisces, are a part of you, and are an integral part of you, and you don't want to dump that Pisces onto other people. And aside from that, right now, Virgo, you actually have quite a lot of energy. You are quite energetic. I mean, heliocentrically, there is a trine aspect between Mercury and Mars at the moment, and so you do want things to happen, and you want things to happen quite quickly. And the reason for that is that you do have a lot of energy. You're energized. And the question is, what do you do with this energy? Where do you place it? And I think that there will be opportunities to place that energy. But you don't want to scatter it. I mean, that's important. Going back to this idea of chaos, you could put energy here, there, and everywhere. You could put your energy into criticizing people. I mean, that is a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could happen. And so, Pisces, I think it's very important that you are really, as constructive as possible, and you decide, what is important, and you just give it everything you've got. But also, it's not about being a steamroller, or it's about having the sensitivity of Virgo. It's about having the sensitivity of Pisces, and understanding that inner sensitivity, and taking the time to understand other people, understand what other people are signaling. And it's just worth taking a break, worth sort of soaking it up and seeing where it's all going. And I think that that sensitivity is going to be useful, not just today, but over the next month. Libra. Venus is in a terrific position, you could say. I mean, it's in Pisces. It's the moon is making a conjunction to Venus. Of course, Venus in Pisces is exalted. Venus is starting to move towards a trine of Jupiter. In fact, heliocentrically, Venus and Jupiter are almost exactly in trine, and so it's all happening. And yeah, you can feel really, really good about yourself, and comfortable and confident. And at the same time, there's nothing you really have to do. When I say there's nothing you have to do, there's nothing you have to present. You don't have to be at the center of things. In fact, I think basically, Libra, I think you'd prefer not to be at the center of things. You would prefer to be working perhaps on your own, not even working, just making sure that everything is in order, everything is in the right place. Feeling, just feeling good about yourself, and feeling good about your environment. And if something isn't to your taste, and it might not be to your taste. I mean, Libra is a sign that is quite aesthetic, and concepts of beauty and ugliness, may be quite important to you, and you're quite sensitive to it, particularly now. And so it could be just a time for bringing into your life things that are beautiful and harmonious, and getting rid of things that seem ugly. Or maybe they can be changed, but you don't need to have ugliness around you. And it's a delicate process, and you have the sensitivity to do it all. So really think about what you can create, and also think about balance. And balance is not just about aesthetics. It's about the way you feel, making sure your body is in harmony with the rest of the world, and your mind and your spirit. And so just being really centered, and that doesn't require, I don't think, anyone's help, not if you don't want that help. And so that kind of looks good. If anything could spoil that, if there is a kind of a snake of dissatisfaction out there, that snake could be sort of whispering to you, telling you that things can't last, that it could all end in tears, that however good things look now, it's all going to get destroyed. And besides, we're all going to be dead in the end. I mean, I'm not saying that is central to the way you think about things, but it just could be something just on the periphery, just trying to upset you, trying to tell you that it's not okay. And you So your potential for happiness could somehow be undermined by this negativity. And I'm not going to say that you should totally disregard negative feelings. You should be constructive about it. So if you start to think about what things could go wrong, okay, we're all going to die. I mean, fine. And it is possible that some Librans, in spite of this happiness, perhaps in fact because of this potential for happiness, are thinking about the endings. And one does think about death. I mean, it's always good to be aware that nothing lasts forever. It's perhaps good to have that skull on our desk to remind us that even we are mortal. But we really don't want to exaggerate. And it could be, if we look at things in a most constructive way, that if you see that something could go wrong, then you're not going to be complacent about it. So you can really start to sort things out and feel comfortable and feel in tune with things. You know that things could easily be upset, so you do something about it. Perhaps you take action to insure yourself. I don't mean necessarily taking out an insurance premium, but just making sure that everything is covered. Anything that you think about things that could go wrong, and then you just make sure that it can't happen, or you reduce the chances of them going wrong. So that is something you can do that is quite constructive, and so you're not complacent. And maybe that's also something we can take away. You are not complacent, but you really do have the capacity for having a day, Libra, which is really feeling happy and balanced and also healthy. Scorpio. As far as what's going on today, Scorpio, well, we're getting a lot of planets in Pisces. I mean, today we've got the sun moving into Pisces. We've already got the moon in Pisces. So it's piling up. And if we think about Pisces, we should probably see Pisces in contrast to Aquarius, because there have been a lot of planets in Aquarius. And if you have been listening to my forecasts for your sign over the last few weeks, you'll know that I've gone on about Aquarius quite a lot, and I've seen or discussed some of the potential problems. And with all these planets in Aquarius, it just may have been times when you've just been too into yourself, perhaps too introspective, perhaps too obsessed about your own needs, and you haven't been thinking about what is actually possible. But with these planets moving into Pisces, things are I think getting better. I think that you're going to become more constructive, and I think braver as well, particularly when it comes to your own creativity and your own abilities, and doing something that is really special for you. And I think that it can in that sense be a new beginning. And this new moon we had yesterday on Tuesday, which was in Aquarius, is kind of morphing into a Pisces new moon, because right now we've got the sun and the moon in Pisces, or at least the sun is moving into Pisces, and that creates a different emphasis. And you are starting to see what is possible and how you can stamp everything with your unique character. You are not a clone. You are not a robot. You are not a machine. You have a particular way of doing things. And I think that this is going to be clear, across the board, and it's going to be, for example, clear in terms of your work. If you're working, then you're going to work in a way that is all about you. Okay, you still have to do the job. You have to fulfill whatever the job description is, but you can do something which is for you, which is a representative of you. And if you do that, then you're going to be appreciated. That's what people want. And you understand what is you understand the challenges, you have the sensitivity to understand the challenges, and you can see what needs to be done and how you need to do it. So I think Pisces, that is Scorpio. Scorpio, I think that's something that you can really develop. And then there is the question of how close do you get to people? I mean, you can deal with people pretty well. You know what makes people tick. That's true, but you don't want to get probably too close to anyone. Like yesterday, some people might just be disappointing. You try your hardest, but they just don't deliver. And if you try to get close to someone, it might get messy. Something is being held back. Maybe it's you holding something back. Maybe it's someone else holding something back. So, keep social contacts probably, on quite a light level. There's really no need to get too close to anyone. Well, at least when I'm talking here about maybe your social life, as far as closer relationships, well, that's a different matter. I mean, the moon is making a conjunction to Venus. It's making a trine to Jupiter. I mean, the moon is making a conjunction to Venus, in Pisces, in a part of your chart that is sometimes connected with love and romance. So maybe close relationships are going to be fine, but sort of more distant relationships might be rather disappointing if you try to get too close to someone who you don't really know. Yeah, there is scope for being disappointing or for expectations not being fulfilled. But I don't want to take away from the fact that Scorpio, I think today can be really good. Sagittarius. So with these planets moving into Pisces, it's really piling up now. We've got the Sun moving into Pisces. Of course, the Sun always moves into Pisces at this time of year, but with the Moon in Pisces and Mercury and Venus, it kind of feels a bit preparatory for something else which might happen at a later stage, and you might feel that there isn't really any real need to do anything much, anything particularly seriously. And I've got a problem here, that I'm being completely blinded by the sun. I know I should do something about it. I mean, at least it's sunny. There was snow on the ground. There was a dusting of snow overnight, but now there's sun and it's blasting at me. But anyway, I was just about able to navigate the screen. So Sagittarius, you want to reflect, I think. I don't think right now there's absolutely anything that you need to do. And if you look at the chart, the chart I'm showing you, you'll notice that all the planets are on the bottom half. I mean, can we talk about the horizon? We can't really talk about the horizon because it's not a proper ascendant, but you could say symbolically it's kind of below the horizon, and this can be a time when it's more about you, I won't say hiding, but you are retreating and you are developing. And where's the best place to develop? You could say that it's best to develop in the darkness. You can replenish yourself, and of course later in the year things are going to change. But for the moment, and particularly when you've got these planets in Pisces, it is a time for thinking about yourself, for recharging your batteries, for getting your strength back. I'm not saying you lost your strength, but there are still things to think about, things to reflect, and that reflect on, and that just might be the way you want to handle today. Certainly today. Tomorrow, I mean, the moon will move into Aries in a couple of days' time. That will create a change, but for the moment, I don't think you should feel any great sense of obligation. Now the Sun in Pisces is starting to make a sesquiquadrate to Jupiter, and that sesquiquadrate to Jupiter, I think that's exact. That aspect is exact tomorrow on Thursday. So with the Sun sesquiquadrate Jupiter, you may be feeling slightly agitated. It's like you feel that something should be happening. The Sun is quite a positive planet, even though it is in Pisces. But you feel that something's going on, and it might be the agitation. It might come from your own home. Perhaps having to think about your home and thinking about security, and it doesn't feel entirely comfortable. Because the Sun is sesquiquadrate Jupiter. It's hitting your Jupiter is your ruler, and so you might not quite know how to respond. And the best way to respond, perhaps, if you're feeling something needs to be resolved, is maybe to resolve it. Now, although I have said that I don't think that right now, or at least I've suggested that I don't think now is a great time for having a sort of a super busy social life. It might be that a connection with the right person today. That maybe there's just someone you need to connect with, and you need to connect with them in quite a definite way and have a focus. Decide that you need to be in touch with one particular person, or maybe it might be an organization, but probably a person, for one particular reason, because something needs to be resolved, something that you're not happy about, something you don't understand. You make the effort, you get the answers you're looking for, and then you can relax. And so that just might be where the excitement lies today. But the excitement is all about just making things easier for yourself and making it easier so that you can start to relax and to think about what it means to feel comfortable. Capricorn. So Capricorn, we do have for sure a lot of planets in Pisces, a lot of planets moving into Pisces, and this might mean, Capricorn, that you may have more to say than usual. There are things that you want to discuss, and you think things you want to talk about. There are things on your mind. Your mind has been quite active recently. You've had ideas. Some of your ideas have been very good, and so if you've got good ideas, well, you want to take action. And that's certainly the right approach. And with all these planets in Pisces, you might be feeling that you have to sort of move from one place to another. Remember, Pisces is a mutable sign, doesn't like to stay necessarily in one place for too long, and you move from one place to another, and it's not even particularly well planned. It doesn't have to be well planned. It's just a sort of organic process of movement. I mean, it needn't be physical movement. It could be sort of movement, maybe talking to one person on the phone, or having messaging one person, then you message other people. So there's a lot of that kind of activity, and by and large that's pretty good. But you do have to be careful what you say. There may be moments, Capricorn, where you say something that you hadn't really thought through, and in your own way, Capricorn, at the moment you're capable of being cruder than usual. Now, I'm not saying Capricorn is a crude sign. I mean, it's quite an earthy sign. There is sometimes an earthiness to the language you use, and maybe that's what we're talking about. But you can just say things which might be jarring, and maybe that comes from the way you're thinking. No one knows what you're thinking. No one knows what anyone is thinking. That's one of the great mysteries of humanity. We think we know people, but we don't. However close we think we are to them, we don't know them. We don't know what they're thinking, and no one knows what you're thinking. And that's perhaps a good thing. Some of your thoughts could be quite negative. They could you might be dwelling on areas which you really wouldn't want to tell anyone that you're thinking. If you, what would people say if they knew what kind of thoughts you were having? And those thoughts can perhaps be kept secret, but they might also manifest in terms of what you say and how you're seeing the world. And so, do think about your audience. Not everyone can necessarily handle you, or they can't handle you in terms of the full extent of your personality and the kind of areas that you're thinking about. So be careful what you say. And something might slip out. Yeah, I know Capricorn has got a reputation for being a careful sign, but you could make a mistake. Maybe it's a deliberate mistake. If you want to create an argument, if you want to change a relationship, if you want to be taken seriously, it's possible that you decide that the best way is to just say something that no one is expecting. It just comes out of the blue, and it could be offensive. It's possible that that needs to be done. Sometimes you have to be very earthy. You have to, other people are floating around, and then you have to bring them down to earth, and you say something that they just don't want to hear, and it does make a huge difference. Aquarius. So it's pretty much gone. Nothing left in Aquarius except for Mars. I mean, Mars will be in Aquarius for a bit longer, for another couple of weeks. But the Sun has moved out of Aquarius, the Sun moves out of Aquarius. London time, just before 10 to 4 around 10 to 4 in the afternoon, 8 minutes to 4 in the afternoon this morning, if you're in the Americas. So with the Sun moving into Aquarius, with the Sun moving out of Aquarius, that does create a change. Perhaps it means that the focus is not so much on you. It could be more on other people and more on other things. You've gone so far. You've had lots of ideas. You may have been very inspired, but how far can you go? And with all these planets moving into Pisces, as I think I said yesterday, this might mean that there is some link with money and how things are going to be afforded. That's definitely something that many Aquarians will be thinking about. If you're an Aquarian from the United States, then all these planets moving into Pisces, it happens at the same time every year. And of course, the tax season is, the first deadline is less than 2 months away. So if you're a United States taxpayer, all these planets moving into Pisces are gonna really hit you perhaps quite hard. And you've got to sort it all out. So I mean, that's a very mundane and obvious thing to say. But wherever you are, I don't think that. I think that it's important that the financial side of things is not forgotten, and it's something that you may not really want to engage with, but I think you might have to. And whatever you're doing, being aware of the financial dimension, it could be very important, and it could be very relevant. So that's certainly one aspect of the day. But don't forget, Mars is still in Aquarius. It's still there. It's making a mutual reception to Saturn. So Mars and Saturn are in each other's sign. So Saturn is your ruler. It's strengthened by this mutual reception, even though it's in Aries. So as far as you are concerned, I think that you are able to express yourself effectively. There's no doubt about that. You can express yourself effectively, but you do have to be careful what you say, because some Aquarians, might say the wrong thing. It just something occurs to you. You feel it's you've got to talk about it. Why not? But you do talk about it, and it hits the wrong note. So Aquarius, it's very important that you think about the other person. You think about what the other person can handle, what they can deal with, and some of your observations, some of your comments may not be particularly welcome. It might go further than that. I mean, as I was saying to Capricorn, and there are some connections obviously between Capricorn and Aquarius, because both Capricorn and Aquarius are ruled by Saturn. As I was saying to Capricorn, and this is relevant to you as well, do be careful about your language, because there's some danger that you just say the wrong thing. You say something which is inappropriate, and it might be, excessively crude. It might be very real, might be very down to earth, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it should be pointed out, right now. Other people do have their sensibilities, and I think you have to be aware of them. Pisces, the sun is moving into your sign. Quite when it happens depends on your time zone. If you're in London, it happens at 4:52 in the afternoon. If you're in the Americas, it will by and large take place this morning. I think if you're in Chile, though, it will take place at about 10 to 1 in the afternoon. But for most of the Americas, it will be this morning. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, then the sun won't move into Pisces until tomorrow. But it is happening, and there's now a lot happening in your sign. And okay, Mars has still got to go, and it'll be a couple of weeks before Mars moves into Pisces. But right now, the emphasis is very much on you, and and you, I think, really have quite a lot of power, and you can present yourself very well. Already you've got Mercury and Venus in Pisces, and and the Moon in Pisces. So with the Moon moving through your sign, the Moon is today it makes a conjunction to the North Node. It makes a conjunction to Venus, makes a trine to Jupiter, and it makes a conjunction to Mercury. So all of this is looking good, and particularly the Moon in Jupiter. That Moon-Jupiter trine certainly is something to notice. I mean, Jupiter is your ruler, and Jupiter's in Cancer. It's exalted in Cancer. The Moon and Jupiter are in mutual reception. In other words, the Moon and Jupiter are in each other's signs, and so that is certainly good news. And it really does emphasize the point that you can present yourself just extremely well. And so it's important that you're natural, you are yourself, and you do things that you enjoy. And that is an essential part of Jupiter being in Cancer. It's about you. It's about your creativity. It's not about anyone else's creativity. You're not there to support someone else's creativity on its own. I mean, it's always good to support other people's creativity, but not at the expense of your own creativity. You've got to put yourself first, and just consider the possibility that you're the one that matters. It's your genius that matters. Other people can look after their own genius, and you don't have to spend ages flattering people. It's you that matters. And Venus is also starting to make a trine to Jupiter. In fact, heliocentrically, Venus is making an exact trine to Jupiter. So this Moon trine Jupiter, really does look good. And I think today you're going to be very fortunate. Certainly more fortunate than usual. It might be a bit of a change because we had this new moon yesterday, and at first with that new moon, you might have felt that this was a bit troubling, that you couldn't really do anything with it. You might have felt stuck. But, this new moon, it's a new moon that starts in Aquarius and it ends in Pisces, because the sun and the moon, they started with the exact new moon both being in Aquarius, but now they're both in Pisces, or at least the sun is moving into Pisces and the moon is already in Pisces. So you do have, I think, more than your fair share of good luck. And additionally, you can be very dynamic, because, the sun when it moves into Pisces, is starting to make a sesquiquadrate to Jupiter. Now, normally one would think that a sesquiquadrate would be an unfortunate aspect, but I wouldn't see it as unfortunate. I would have said it, I would have seen it as being dynamic. And there are things you can do, there are things you can create, and your personality should be clear. It should be obvious. You are at the center of things, and you can get people's attention. You can bring people together. If you need someone, then you can ask for their help. They're there for you, because you should be at the center of things. And it's not about being egotistical. Everyone has their moment. Everyone, they do different things at different times. People have their moment to be at the center of things, and this is your moment. And I think it's okay, Pisces, to be somewhat demanding. You're not being obnoxious. You recognize that this is your time, and it's not going to last forever. Sooner or later these planets will move out of Pisces. They'll move into Aries, but Mercury's going to stay in Pisces for a long time, until April. And of course, Jupiter, your ruler, is in Cancer. Great place for Jupiter to be in. So really take advantage of it all, and don't hold back. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. So now it's time to look at things from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 3, difficulty at the beginning. So this might indicate that at first today, it might seem that things are difficult. It might be difficult to make progress. We just might feel that we don't have the resources. That everything is hard work, and it might seem that we need to get some help, and that seems to be a reasonable thing to do. If we can't do it on our own, what else do we do? Now, help can take many forms. It can be about directly asking for assistance, or it can be using the internet, using YouTube videos. There's lots of instructional stuff on pretty much everything on YouTube and on the internet in general. Of course, you've got ChatGPT, so if you've got a problem, see what ChatGPT has got to say. But you shouldn't expect to be able to do things on your own, at least to begin with. And if you do try to do things on your own at first, then I think it's possible that you soon get into trouble. And we've got the third line moving. So the third line in a hexagram is often unfortunate. It can represent a problem. And we have the imagery here of perhaps going into a forest without a guide. We think we can handle it. We think we know what we're doing, and it soon becomes clear that we don't know what we're doing. So it's important to have a considerable amount of humility at the beginning of the day, to understand our limitations. It might seem the honourable thing to do it on our own. We don't want to bother anyone. But if we can't do it, if we even have any doubts, we should just stop and wait for the situation to stabilize. So that's the first position. But we do get another moving line. We get the fourth moving line. And so with the fourth moving line, I think that things are looking a lot better. I think that we start to understand the situation, and because we start to understand the situation, we know our limits, and we also know what can be provided, by outside forces. So we know what to ask for, and we're able to make connections, and we're able to make connections with people who can be of assistance. And this brings us back to this idea of a difficulty at the beginning. Just because something starts badly, it doesn't mean that it ends like that. Things can improve, and I think there will be improvement over the course of the day, provided we show some maturity. It's just so important that we don't rush into something, think we can do it all ourselves, and then we could quickly get ourselves into trouble. Now we do have a second hexagram because of those moving lines, and the second hexagram is hexagram number 49, which is revolution. So this is quite a dramatic hexagram, and this may relate to how we might be stuck. We might feel ourselves to be stuck, and a small change, is a small change good enough? Maybe we need a root and branch change. Maybe that is required. But just tweaking at the edges is just not good enough. And if we want to make progress, there are certain things that might have to be overthrown. We might also have to consider, where we are in the social hierarchy, looking at our relationships with other people. Maybe it occurs to us that some people are just not being helpful, and we need to distance these people from ourselves because it's necessary. We do have to think about ourselves, think about our own needs, but it's just very important that we don't regard ourselves as being on our own. We're not on our own. We can certainly get help, but we have to get help from the right people. And perhaps with this revolution, we can completely change our view of our support systems. Maybe in the past our support systems just haven't been good enough, and we need to find new people who've got new ideas, and also people who have a better understanding of us. So looking at the hexagram overall, it doesn't look too bad, but we just shouldn't be surprised if to begin with things are difficult. And certainly if we try to do things on our own, or indeed with the wrong people, we're not going to make much progress. But I think that help is definitely at hand. And so now I want to finish by looking at the Sun in Pisces, because today that is of course what happens. So here's a chart of the Sun in Pisces. This is the moment the Sun moves into Pisces. So I've set this for London, but it doesn't really matter. And so I would argue that it's pretty fortunate that the Sun moves into Pisces, because it's out of Aquarius. It's out of the sign where it's in its detriment. And the Sun is not happy in Aquarius. And I know some of you might disagree with me, but I'm taking a fairly traditional view. So, for example, William Lilly in Christian Astrology, when he's allocating points, he, for example, gives if the Sun is in Leo, it gets +5. If it's in Aquarius, it gets -5, because it's in its detriment. And so the Sun moving into Pisces, straight away the Sun gains strength. So that is good, and the Sun will get stronger because beginning of March, I think it's March 6, Venus moves into Aries, and that means that the Sun and Venus will be in mutual reception by exaltation, because the Sun is exalted in Aries and Venus is in the Sun's exaltation sign. Likewise, Venus is exalted in Pisces, Sun is in Pisces. So the Sun is quite soon going to get added strength. But for the moment, we've got the Sun in Pisces. It's moving towards the North Node. So the North Node certainly adds strength to the Sun, and it means that perhaps we can be more dynamic, and we can go in the right direction. The Sun in Aquarius, of course, the Sun is in an air sign. Now that it's in a water sign, it gives us a degree of sensitivity, and perhaps emotional sensitivity. Especially now when we've got all of these planets in Pisces. We've got it's not just the Sun in Pisces. We've got Mercury in Pisces, and Venus in Pisces, and as far as today is concerned, we've got the Moon in Pisces as well. So that Pisces energy is strong, and it is the right direction to go, because we do need to think about the nodes. North node is in Pisces, south node is in Virgo. For many of us, it is okay to let go emotionally, not to feel that we can absolutely understand everything by just looking at its surface appearances. There's not much Earth in the chart at the moment, just Uranus in Taurus, and the south node is in Virgo. We don't want to be too Virgo about it. The Virgo principle, it should be something that we should be moving away from. Everything that is not Virgo. Virgo is a mutable sign like Pisces, but it's an earth sign. And I think that by just looking at things in a broad emotional sense, that is a way forward. And we also want to be able to make sense of things. A lot of us are trying to make sense of things, and it's hard. It's hard because we get this kind of news flow, constant news flow about geopolitics, economics, tariffs, dollar, whatever. And if we look at the whole thing at face value on the surface, it would drive us crazy. And we have to use our feelings to kind of understand, what is going on. What is the underlying picture? Are things quite as bad as they sound? Are people lying to us? And Pisces is a sign that is sometimes associated with lying, and I'm not suggesting anyone should lie. I mean, you think about slippery Pisces and so on, but Pisces can also be good at spotting a lie. Use your feelings to get a feel for another person's motivations. Now, thinking about the sign Pisces in a sort of more general sense, and this is a controversial point to some. I am absolutely adamant that Pisces is a sign that is ruled by Jupiter. I don't accept that Neptune rules Pisces. Likewise with Aquarius. I regard Aquarius as a Saturn-ruled sign. I don't believe that Uranus rules anything. And there are a number of reasons for this, because Uranus and Neptune are discovered planets. And additionally, when you think about the concept of essential dignities, essential dignities are the way in which you allocate strength to a planet using a traditional scheme. And it's not just about signs, it's about exaltations. It's, for example, about whether or not a planet is a day or a night ruler. It's whether these minor dignities like terms and faces, which have been set out since Ptolemaic times, and I think maybe earlier. And Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are not part of that scheme. They absolutely are not. So it's you can't say, is Neptune ruler a daytime planet or a nighttime planet? Okay, it might feel like a nighttime planet because it's Neptune, but where do you get that idea from? So I'm really adamant here that Jupiter rules Pisces, Saturn rules Aquarius here. So that means that what's happened is that the Sun has moved from a Saturn-ruled planet, a positive Saturn-ruled planet, because you could argue that Neptune is that Capricorn is a negative sign, is the negative aspect of sorry, let me say it again. Capricorn is kind of a negative aspect of Saturn. Aquarius is the positive aspect. I don't mean positive and negative in a positive or negative way. It's just negative is more receptive, maybe positive is more active. So it moves from that into Pisces, which is a Jupiter-ruled sign, but you could argue a negative Jupiter-ruled sign, because Jupiter also rules Sagittarius. So that is a big sign change. And so, what does it mean for Pisces to be a Jupiter-ruled sign? I mean, Jupiter can glom on to ideas and philosophies and principles, sometimes other people's ideas and philosophies. Sagittarius is more Jupiter and Sagittarius, and that connection with Jupiter and Sagittarius, that is more, Sagittarius is a more sort of active side of Jupiter, constructively working out an idea, whereas Pisces might be more passive about it. And there is a morality to Pisces. Now, that doesn't mean to say generally moral. It's not like Pisces are more moral than other people. It's more that a Pisces can believe something to be the case, believe that something is the only way and it is the right thing to do, and indeed it can become an excuse. If you develop a morality, maybe someone else's morality, then it can excuse all sorts of things. It can excuse the most horrific things, because Pisces can say, well, the ends justify the means, and that's what we've been told. And I do, with Pisces, at its worst, I do like to think of Hermann Goering's remark that the name of my conscience is Adolf Hitler. That's Pisces at its absolute worst. Now, Goering was not a Pisces, he was a Capricorn. But I kind of think that comment can say something about some Pisceans, and that can explain perhaps the unpleasantness of some Pisceans. And I'm not saying that Pisces is an unpleasant sign, but if you have a morality, well, that justifies everything. And so if you think about some famous or infamous Pisceans, I mean, look at the Supreme Court Justice Anthony. I'm not showing our charts here. I'm just going through. I'm just going through a few famous people here. You look at Antonin Scalia. So he was a Supreme Court Justice, and clearly, Sun in Pisces. That's very Jupiter, isn't it? You see Jupiter ruling that Sun in Pisces. Jupiter is the judge. He had real beliefs about the American law, about an American constitution. I mean, I don't know quite the details, but he was an originalist. Don't ask me what that means. But in 2020, when you had this argument about who won the American election and the Florida election result with the hanging chads and all of this, basically the Supreme Court gave it to George Bush Jr. And Scalia was, of course, a leading light on the Supreme Court. And you can see how that Sun in Pisces would work. You claim to be objective, but Sun in Pisces is not really objective. He had his reason. The name of my conscience is the American Constitution, but his particular interpretation of the American Constitution. And so, that's perhaps why he gave it to George Bush Jr. He obviously had sympathies towards the Republicans. I'm not saying this, by the way, to make a comment about a left-right commentary, but certainly my general observation of the American legal system and its judicial system is highly problematic. I think it's a real problem that people elect judges. It sounds democratic in America, but it's not democratic at all, because judges get endorsed by politicians. That's how they get elected. And of course, if you're endorsed by a politician, then you might well owe that politician a favour. And looking at how the judicial system works here in the county I'm living in, I'm not convinced that the judiciary is objective at all. I think that there are vested interests, but perhaps through things like endorsements are able to get judges to support sort of particular views, which is a very Piscean thing. But certainly Antonin Scalia had his Sun in Pisces, and if you think about the worst Pisceans, well, I mean, you've got that sort of trio of Nazis, Joseph Mengele, Adolf Eichmann, and Heydrich. were all Pisceans. When you think about Nazis and war crimes, they all of them, they didn't have to think, because they were just able to absorb themselves in Nazi ideology, and that made a difference. And that was the prevailing ideology. That was the government. So it was just easy for them to fit in, and that provided their justification. And that I think it can be a very Piscean thing. And Pisceans can just they can just get carried away with it. And talking about an ideology, Osama bin Laden, he was a Pisces, and so Osama bin Laden, again, you think about the philosophy behind it. Islam, fundamentalist Islam, Al Qaeda. It justified everything, and it justified 9/11. Of course, I know some people don't believe that it was Al Qaeda that was responsible for 9/11, but certainly Osama bin Laden, and also what was his name? Khomeini. Oh God. The guy in charge of the Republican Guards was born on the same day, the one who was assassinated by Trump some years ago. Trump ordered his assassination, and he was head of Republican Guards. He was born on the same day as Khomeini, I think his name was. It began with a Q, not Khomeini, but it began with a Q. But he was born on the same day as Osama bin Laden. So you've got that justification, you've got that Jupiterian morality, which can justify everything. It might not seem very moral to you, but it's definitely a kind of morality. Now, it could be the case that some politicians can be relatively effective if they've got Sun in Pisces. I mean, if you're in Australia, I believe your Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has a Sun in Pisces. I don't know much about Anthony Albanese, but he won the last election against the odds, and so no doubt he has a set of ideas which justify anything. Or Erdogan, the Turkish president, he has his Sun in Pisces. Sun in Pisces, politicians with Sun in Pisces, they can be sort of gently sort of manipulative, or maybe not even gently. They know how to organize the wheels of power, and they can be quite ruthless about it. Robert Mugabe, the leader in Zimbabwe, who was pretty ruthless. I mean, he had the Sun in Pisces. And Pisces can get carried away. I'm being quite negative about Pisces. My apologies. I will come up with some more positive more positive examples of Pisces in a moment. But think of Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX fame. Remember FTX was its 2022, that crypto exchange, and Sam Bankman-Fried, he is in a federal prison, and his company defrauded users of his, he defrauded billions. And typical Sun in Pisces, he had a justification for it. He had this big idea, Sam Bankman-Fried, of he was helping the world. It was a philosophy that you use the money you have to make the world a better place. And that was his justification. So Sun in Pisces, Jupiter ruled, had a justification for ripping off clients, because you use some of this money for good causes. For example, like being a massive donor to the Biden 2020 election campaign. And that's the Sun in Pisces gone wrong. And Sun in Pisces can get carried away. The name of my conscience is whatever. The name of my conscience is just making the world a better place. And that justifies everything. That justifies everything, including ripping off one's clients. So that would be Sam Bankman-Fried. Now, of course, when you're dealing with Pisces, there is an artistic side to it, and Wilfred Owen, the First World War poet. I mean, if you're of a certain age who went to a British school, I don't know what it's like now, but school children in Britain very often spend some time studying war poetry, particularly First World War poetry. It's very accessible First World War poetry, and probably the most important First World War poet, who was killed, Wilfred Owen. I think he was killed a week before the end of the war, just right at the end of the war. I mean, he had his sun in Pisces, so there is something poetic and perhaps angry about Sun in Pisces as well. It can be angry because it's emotional. And, if you look at his poem, Dulce et decorum est, the anger, how sweet and honourable it is to die for one's country, supposedly. And the anger there in his poetry, because he's seen the horrors of the war. So that there is a positive nature there to the Sun in Pisces. And two people who are both Pisceans who I find to be quite fascinating, to be really fascinating, two people born on exactly the same day, are Adolf Eichmann and Clara Breed. Now, you might not have heard of Clara Breed. Clara Breed and Adolf Eichmann, they had something in common. They were both really interested in internment. Now, of course, in the case of Adolf Eichmann, he was interested in concentration camps and sending people to concentration camps and extermination camps. That's what he did. That's why he got hanged. And so you could say that, Sun in Pisces, well, again, he just completely absorbed with the Nazi philosophy. And that was an excuse for everything. That was a reason for everything. You're just following orders. You're just a bureaucrat, and you just do it. And Sun in Pisces has got the perfect justification. But Clara Breed was also concerned with internment. She was born on the same day as Adolf Eichmann, and she was a librarian in California, and she was a librarian at the time of the roundups of these Japanese being sent to internment camps. And so Clara Breed, she thought it was horrendous. She resisted it. She would send food packages to her, former ethnic Japanese who attended her library, and when they were sent off to internment camps, she would send food packets to them, and she would petition the federal government and Roosevelt to just stop the internment. Which so. For a librarian, for a public municipal employee to do that, I mean, that is quite an exceptional thing. So that kind of shows that you mustn't make generalizations. Adolf Eichmann, he took the view just following orders. Clara Breed took it in a completely different way. She stuck her neck out, I would have thought, in the middle of war, standing up against the internment of the Japanese when you're a librarian. That would probably have been quite a risky thing to do. So, that reminds us, that we mustn't make generalizations. So now I just wanted to look at just a few events relating to Sun in Pisces, a few events that happen. Now, until is it 1931 or is it I think it was 1941 to 1941, the inauguration charts of presidents. So here is a chart of Abraham Lincoln's inauguration. I'm not really focusing on the chart itself. He was inaugurated on March the 4th. So up until, I think, the second term of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the president was, I think it was 1936, it might have been 1941. The American president was always inaugurated on March the 4th. So, whether it's George Washington, Theodore Roosevelt, whatever, all those presidents were inaugurated with the Sun in Pisces. Jupiter ruled Sun in Pisces. Now, I wonder, when the inauguration was moved back to be January the 20th during the terms of Franklin D. Roosevelt, suddenly the American presidency had an Aquarian nature, because it always happened when the sun was in Aquarius, rather than a Sun in Pisces nature. And I wonder how much that impacted the American presidency. Now, if you think about Franklin D. Roosevelt, whatever you think about him, he was a powerful president. he really tried to interfere with people's lives. This was a New Deal, having to confiscating people's gold. It was a very interventionist government, and maybe this set the tone for the new presidency, the Sun in Aquarius presidency. Presidents always being inaugurated with when the sun was in Aquarius. And so Aquarius is a sign that is connected with totalitarianism, and it's a sign of its detriment. I mean, did the presidency become more of a problem? But you'd have to know about American history. I mean, so if you know about American history, and you think about American presidents, did something change when the inauguration day moved from Sun in Pisces to Sun in Aquarius? So when you've got the Sun in Pisces, you might be thinking very much about principles. You might feel that it's time to be, doing something impressive, something that makes the world, a better place. And maybe with Sun in Pisces, the ends, always sort of justify the means. So, Julius Caesar, he was assassinated during the Ides of March. So here is the chart of the assassination of Julius Caesar. There was Venus, the Sun, and Mercury were in Pisces. So that may say something about the assassination and the mode. I mean, I'm using real generalizations here, but that's my apologies. But it could be a sort of a Jupiter event. They, Brutus and Cassius, they thought they were doing the right thing, and that's what it was. What it was all about. And Pisces, Jupiter, again, you're thinking about principles and a philosophy, the way things should be. So the Communist Manifesto was published in February the 21st, 1848, when the sun had just gone. The sun was. Sorry, was that the 21st? Yeah, February the 21st. The sun was in Pisces on February the time of the publishing of the Communist Manifesto. And communism is a philosophy. It's a very Piscean philosophy. When we think about philosophy, we're talking about Jupiter. This is the way it should be. Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. And so I would say that is a good example of a Sun in Pisces event, particularly in terms of the Communist Manifesto. Sun is conjunct Neptune in Pisces. Neptune in Pisces, we've just had Neptune in Pisces. Neptune in Pisces, is about compassion, perhaps too much compassion, having feelings for everyone, having feelings for the oppressed workers. That's Sun conjunct Neptune. That's Sun conjunct Neptune in Pisces. I think that does seem to work very well. So other events. The foundation of the British Labour Party. So here's the foundation of a British Labour Party, which is a governing party. Mars is at 28 Aquarius. We just had a new moon on the Labour Party's Mars, and things are going from bad to worse. They did want to cancel local elections, but they've now been told that it's illegal, so they had to reinstate the election. So they're always talked about. This government is really seeming to develop. It's been criticised for having lots of U-turns. I mean, this was not a feature of previous Labour governments, but certainly this Labour government. And so the Labour Party has its sun at 8 degrees Pisces, and I think with Pisces you can perhaps see the compassion there, trying to make the world a better place. So that's an example of a Sun in Pisces organization. Now, Sun in Pisces, Pisces is a water sign, and you can associate Sun in Pisces with water disasters. Fukushima, the Fukushima nuclear disaster, where some tsunami, or was it a tidal wave or whatever it was, led to a sort of just a meltdown in this nuclear reactor in Fukushima. And here we have the chart for this. That Uranus was at 29 Pisces. Uranus was on Skeet. and the Sun was in Pisces, and Mars was in Pisces. I think the Sun is on the conjunct the Mars-Uranus midpoint in Pisces. So that does give us this idea of a sort of water-related disaster. Now, Pisces, well, maybe it's connected with gas. If you're one of the people who believe that Neptune rules Pisces, and Neptune is a planet of gas, one of the most horrific events of recent years was Saddam Hussein's attack on the town of Halabja. It was a Kurdish town, and in 1988, Saddam Hussein's forces, they dropped nerve gas on Halabja, its town in Iraq, and the sun had just gone into Pisces. The moon was in Pisces, and so that perhaps is a Pisces event. Well, with showing Pisces at its very worst. Now, one organization, well, we associate Pisces with water and frozen water. Frozen water is ice. And so here is a horoscope of ice. I'm not making any comments about ice. I mean, when I say making any comment, I'm not expressing any views about ice. But ICE is obviously this organization which is tasked with supposedly dealing with America's problem with illegal immigrants. And so ICE agents have been rounding up illegal immigrants and other people as well. Again, I'm not expressing any opinions here. I'm just looking at the chart of ICE. ICE apparently came into being on March 1st, 2003. So ICE has its sun in Pisces. Now, it's interesting, in this chart, the sun is its only planet in Pisces. It's in fact its only planet in water signs. So maybe that's ice. It is a bit icy, maybe, with a lot of planets, a fair few planets in Aquarius. And so this sun in Pisces, we think, the ends justify the means. We must do what is necessary. We have been ordered to do this, so we have to do this. And that's sun in Pisces, and it's ruled by Jupiter. So anyway, those are a few thoughts about sun in Pisces. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.